This week's gospel, we hear this fascinating miracle of Jesus healing this man who was born blind. There's a lot of interesting details in here. We're going to focus on three. First, the apostles' question to Jesus. They see this blind man, and their first thought is to ask, who sinned, this guy or his parents? It's a weird question for us, right? So in Jesus' day, people often thought that sickness was a direct result of sin, right? And so Jesus is kind of pointing out on this miracle that's not necessarily the case, right? Sometimes that might be the case. Someone may have committed some sin, and as punishment for it, God's like, all right, you're going to have chicken pox or whatever, right? But you can't necessarily look at someone and say, oh, you have cancer. You must be a terrible sinner, right? That is not the case. So Jesus kind of nods at that in this miracle. Second, and perhaps the most interesting thing about this, is the way Jesus goes about healing him. He doesn't snap his fingers. He doesn't just say it like he does with a lot of his other miracles and healings. He spits on the ground, makes mud, and rubs it on this guy's face. This is kind of the grossest way Jesus ever healed somebody, right? There's another healing where he puts his fingers in the guy's ear and groans to heaven. Another kind of weird one. But this is like Jesus makes a cake of mud with his own spit and puts it on this guy's face. What in the world is going on here? It's not Jesus being gross just to be gross, right? It's a nod back to the creation narratives. You might recall in the second creation story early on in the book of Genesis, God scoops up the clay of the earth, he molds man, and then he breathes his own life force into him. This is kind of what Jesus is doing. He's recreating this man who needs recreated. He's scooping up mud from the ground, dust from the ground. Remember back on Ash Wednesday, remember you are dust, and to dust you shall return, right? We're dirt. We're divine dirt. We're dirt that has divine life in it, right? And so Jesus scoops up this dirt, puts his own spit, his own life force, if you will, into it, and puts it on the man to heal him, right? And so the message here is Jesus wants to recreate all of us, maybe not by making this little spit mud cake for each of us, but he's out for our recreation, for restoration, for making us whole again, right? And the third interesting point with this gospel is this man is born blind. And when the apostles ask Jesus who sinned, him or his parents, Jesus says, no, none of them sinned. That's not what the point is. This man was born blind so that God's glory could be revealed in him. And so in your own life, you might think back over, what is a condition that I was born with or born into? Maybe it's a health condition. Maybe it's a family dynamic. There's a long list of things this could possibly be. And perhaps you prayed for healing from this, you prayed for deliverance from this, and it just hasn't happened. What is going on there? Is God ignoring your call? Perhaps it is that God's purpose for this condition in your life has not come about yet. Maybe it hasn't reached the point yet where he wants to show his glory through that thing. Perhaps he hasn't taught you yet what you need to learn from that condition. So all these things together give us this message that Jesus wants to give us today. He wants to bring us back to the fullness of life. He wants to restore us. He wants to make us whole, even if the time for that restoration hasn't come yet.